As an activity professional or care provider supporting people living with dementia, do you often find yourself questioning how you're going to engage your residents or clients in meaningful activities? Are you finding that they're no longer participating in regular activities like bingo, word games, trivia, coloring, puzzles, crafts? Or they start an activity with you, but then they don't sit long enough to complete it? Or that they just watch and not participate? If so, this can be frustrating, right? Because we want the people we care for to be engaged in their day, experiencing fun, stimulating, and fresh activities. Because if they're enjoying themselves, laughing, smiling, engaging with whatever they're doing, then you know their lives are going to feel more purposeful and joyful. And well, then ultimately, you're going to feel like you've done your job and you've done it well. But it can take a lot of planning and effort to run these activities because many of them can't get there on their own. And then once they're there, they need you to guide them, inspire them, and support them. And really, how easy is this, especially when you're responsible for many people with a wide variety of cognitive and physical needs, different interests and skill sets, and the loss of ability to follow or hear directions? Then, because you have a heart of gold and you're doing the very best you can, you may just get down on yourself a little bit because you feel like you're not doing a good enough job. Or worse yet, you might fear that others are judging you because your people are not engaged. Ugh. Now, this may or may not be you, but it sure was me when I was responsible for facilitating activities in a memory care community. So if this is you, I so wish I had a magic wand and could give you the powers to make all of these challenges and more go away. But unfortunately, I can't because I'm just like you. But what I can do is share 3 great tips with you that I use when facilitating tray play sessions that I have found to increase engagement. So I fully realize that you may not be offering tray play-like activities to those you support. Heck, you might not even know what tray play is at this point. But that doesn't matter, because I believe that these tips are ones that you can apply to the activities that you're already offering. When I apply these 3 tips during tray play sessions, I can captivate my residents' or clients' attention for extended amounts of time. I can increase the chance of engaging some residents who are harder to reach. I can move someone from doing nothing to doing something. I can eliminate the need for following or hearing directions. I can easily welcome almost all cognitive and physical abilities to the table. I can support and honor different interests without even having prior knowledge. And I can catch the attention of support staff and bystanders. These 3 tips have worked for me over the last 7 years, offering tray play experiences to a wide variety of long-term care communities in my area. So I believe it will work for you too. So here are the 3 tips for increasing attention span and participation when engaging in activities. Tip 1. Make your activities open-ended. When one is living with later stages of dementia, I find that it's easiest to capture and sustain one's attention if we make our activities open-ended. An open-ended activity means that there are multiple, if not infinite, possible outcomes rather than just one. An open-ended activity allows a situation to adapt to meet the needs of the participant and not the other way around. Also, an open-ended activity allows for spontaneous or unguided actions, which means that there are no directions, examples, or roadmaps to follow. And therefore, when you offer an open-ended experience, no specific skill set is required. All levels of ability are welcome. There is no right or wrong, and prior knowledge is only a bonus. Your participants can come to the activity with their own agenda and participate in a way that makes sense to them. So great, right? So how can you take one of your current activities and make it open-ended? Release yourself from expectations of the end result. Let your residents or clients take the lead. Be open to what comes about naturally and just go with the flow. Once you give this a try, you might find this tip very freeing. Tip 2. Create a multisensory experience. Wake up those senses by including materials that are sensory stimulating in your activities. Offer materials that have different textures, weights, visual appeal, aromas, flavors, sounds, and so on. What this does is that it increases the touch points for interaction and can lure participants in with whatever sense they still have access to. For participants that have the ability to see, offer them objects that are either beautiful, familiar, unusual, or interesting. This alone usually brings them into engagement and will trigger conversation. If one says, well, I can't see all that well, then invite them to touch and perhaps hold it. Just by touching objects with varying textures automatically triggers the brain. So even if one can't see so well, they can receive input to the brain just by having something in their hand. Something can be hot or cold, heavy or light, rough or smooth. This is all activating the brain. I find that adding music in the background is a wonderful way to stimulate hearing, and many will find it very enjoyable to listen to. The music could be relaxing, beautiful, fun, or familiar. Any type will perk up those ears. Also, simply listening to others talk or being part of a conversation stimulates hearing. There may even be some interesting sounds with the materials coming in contact with each other or simply being moved around. Using materials that have an aroma is fun for those who do still have a sense of smell. Using fresh or dried flowers, homemade dough with essential oils, or cinnamon sticks can all help create an aromatic experience. You could pamper your participants with a 1-minute spa treatment that smells delightful and is so very relaxing by providing warm washcloths soaked in lavender water. And not will that only stimulate one's sense of smell, but of course their sense of touch as well. Because I need to be super clear to the participants I work with that the materials are for the hands only and are not meant for eating, I don't stimulate taste, as I feel like it would be too confusing. But I'm sure that there are many ways that you can stimulate those taste buds during the course of the day. And I actually think that mealtime is one of the best multisensory experiences one can have. So the more senses you can stimulate, the better chance you have engaging your resident or client. So just take a moment to think about some of the activities you do now. Is there any way for you to make it more sensory stimulating? Tip 3. Pace material distribution. My third tip for you today is the one that made all the difference to me when I was in the midst of developing a sensory program at a local health and rehab facility about 7 years ago. I had come from the early childhood world, so at that point, my only experience was working with children. I knew that children loved to get their hands on things, and the more they had, the better. And they were often quick to move and make decisions. So you can imagine being an activity professional or a care provider supporting people living with dementia, that I was in for a surprise. I thought, how wonderful to offer a room full of adults so quietly and calmly around the table an array of choices. I could display all these wonderful, enticing, open-ended, sensory stimulating materials in the middle of the table, and people could just choose what they wanted to create a design or a scene on their tray. But guess what happened? Nothing. Well, it sure didn't take me long to realize that that wasn't going to work. Do you know what did, though? Placing one material in their hand at a time, and then asking them to place it somewhere, anywhere on their tray. Once they did that, I placed another object near them or in their hand and asked them to place it on their tray. Then we had success. Beautiful scenes were created, even if participants were doubtful about their abilities. And they were often pleasantly surprised by the outcome. Many times, if a person living with dementia is presented with too many materials all at once, they can become overwhelmed. And what does someone do when they become overwhelmed? Well, they do absolutely nothing. Or they flee. Or, if they're not overwhelmed, they can be quick to finish, and then the activity is over in no time. But what if you considered presenting the materials you wanted them to use one at a time, or just a few at a time? This helps prevent overwhelm. And it allows you to highlight the item and talk about it to see if it stimulates conversation or other actions. And then when you felt like you were done exploring that one piece of the activity, you could hand them the next, and so on. So as they lose interest, you are right there to present the next thing. This idea of pacing the distribution of materials gives your participant more of a chance to connect with the materials at hand and to keep moving them through the activity till the end. So I hope you take some time to take a moment and see how one or more of these tips could apply to what you're already doing. And then see if you find it easier for those you're caring for with dementia to be engaged. Now, no matter how many tips we have under our belt to better serve those we care for, it's a challenge, no doubt. But if you choose to make small tweaks, small changes in your daily calendar activities, you may just find more enjoyment in your day and in your residents' or clients' day. The reality of it all is that there does come a time when tried and true activities are no longer accessible for your resident or client. They may not be able to participate in activities that require a specific outcome like they once did. They may not be able to hear or see as well as they used to. And they may get overwhelmed easier when there are too many choices to be had. And there may become a time when honestly they need you to guide them and encourage them every step of the way. And unfortunately, that's not going to change. And if you continue to give them activities with complex directions, or that aren't sensory rich, or that don't break the activity down into the most manageable bite-sized pieces, then you're going to have a hard time captivating and maintaining their attention. So instead, try offering open-ended, sensory stimulating activities that are led by you, distributing materials in a controlled way, and see how more likely it is to increase your attention span and participation. So, again, I encourage you to experiment with some of the activities you already provide and see what happens if you apply all 3 tips. If you're interested in learning more about the tray play experience that does encompass all 3 tips, please join us in the Sensory Stimulation for Seniors Facebook group. It's free, and I'm there to support you in any way that I can. So I hope to see you there. Thanks for listening.